Hello, good morning. This is Tom, aka Gedeon, here for Star Frontiers Gamer. Today we're going to be doing a deeper look at the Nagana. And I'm glad I actually took a second look. There was setting material here that I'm sure I had fully read this article way back in the day when I first encountered Star Frontiersman #1. But over time, when I'd flip through the magazine and I'd look at the Nagana, I never looked past the first page of information on them. There is a lot here, and what has triggered this deeper look is that I noticed on Hero Forge, I managed to create a Nagana miniature for myself on Hero Forge. And so that's kind of what has triggered this. So let's take a look at the fan magazine, and it's Star Frontiersman #1, and we've got to scroll down here. There's the page for the Nagana, and let's just zoom in. This is the illustration provided with them. Now, when you read this here, it says they're going into the physical structure. It says their lower body, a long tail ending with a slight vestigial fin. Does not really help them swim anymore. Their upper bodies are more humanoid with 2 long arms. Where was it? I skipped it here. Their bodies are more snake-like than fish-like. Now, let's just take a look at Hero Forge. When you go into Hero Forge, now, don't be so quick to check out. You might be going like, oh, I don't do miniatures. I don't paint miniatures. It's okay, because the neat thing about Hero Forge is you can do a colored, let's look at my heroes here. So you can do a screenshot of this after you've colored these up. You've developed the miniature, and you can do a screenshot and just use it as a character portrait in your game. You can even zoom in and do just do a close-in character, and be able to use this in your game, even if you don't use miniatures, even if you do theater of the mind. So this is a very handy tool. And what I've done is I have designed a Nagana. I'm going to show you the different settings to use to come up with the Nagana. This is a Nagana leader. Ugly Spud. I've decided this one's a female due to stuff in the article we're going to be looking at. But when you come in, all right, new. When you come in to Hero Forge, you are going to click on new and then scroll down the species options. Now, remember, the description said they were more snake-like. We'll just click on this for now. We don't want a female one. We want a male one. So it's much more snake-like. I think it's almost too snake-like with this. So we're going to go with male merfolk. And I like that, you've got fins. You've got fins on them, on the forearms and on the tail. And this looks like a significant fin here at the very end of the tail, but it's okay. I kind of like it. Next up, you want to choose the head. We got to get the right face, and I went with the turtle-like face. I felt like, let's jump back, that turtle-like face was a good match to this illustration here. So I went with turtle-like face on there. We've got to get rid of the hair. So you click on hair and you scroll down till you find which one is activated with the highlighter there, and we click on it and that deletes it. We need to adjust the ears. The image here, he's almost no ear. And you could do that. We could just click on this ear and get rid of it, and no ear. I, however, like the mangled ear. choice. It puts a small ear there that's very close into the head. This is the option that is the smallest and in close to the head. So I like the mangled ear, and we should just body. With the body, you need the where are you? Lizard-like torso. Now, because of the shirt, you can't see what that's going to look like. So let's go to strip away the clothing. So here is our basic Nagana. Lizard-like torso, turtle head, mangled ear, no hair, merfolk body. And now we start building him up. And this is, at this point, this is where you begin adding some clothing items, some gear. For instance, on clothing, you want to go to legs, even though you obviously can't wear pants. And I like this is called the Gunslinger's Belts. So if we go back to the illustration here, he's got cross belts, kind of like that look. And so my my first character I created, it's got the Gunslinger Belts. Not all of them do, but you can choose one of these. And since we're going to see later on, they're a more primitive species, pre-industrial. You could do things like the rope belt, or fancy belt here. Probably should have done that on the leader that I did, but I haven't exported it to an STL file yet to print 3D print. So I still can change that leader, and I might just come back and add that. There's some interesting belts here, but this is my favorite. It kind of matches that illustration. And you would then go in and choose, clothing, like the chest clothing. I highly recommend the any shirt that has no sleeves or short sleeves. Like, for instance, this would work. Depends on the character you're trying to develop. There's the football jersey. I don't see it yet, but the football jersey actually has a nice sci-fi look. So it's really going to depend on how you color it up on the character, plus the other sci-fi accoutrements. And so anything like this would work. Even I considered using this on my leader. It's a seaweed wrap. The only thing I didn't like was it also added these barnacles. So, you're going to choose the equipment that suits you. For simplicity, let's go take a look at some of the NPCs that I did up. Now, this character I did up as a PC / maybe NPC part of the crew. And you can see here, I've played around with, I've manipulated the arms and the pose. Oh, I should talk about the pose. I should have talked about the pose while I still had the other character up. When you go into pose, body pose, all of these standing poses had that merfolk up on the very tip of their tail, and it just didn't look good. But if you scroll down and you find the kneeling poses, all of the kneeling poses work. Because you end up with them more down on their tail. It looks better for the Nagana. And so here I've used this particular kneeling pose. I don't want to change it because then I'd actually have to redo some other things in the pose because I'm liking where this guy is at. You know what? The only thing not done here in the color is the eyes. We need to fix the eyes. All right, there we go. Now there is if I'm going to run a Nagana as a PC, or if I'm going to run him in game as an NPC, Astrogator, this is him. And so I've done him up in classic coloration of grays to white to black, and even put a little sci-fi doodad on here. Now, while I'm here on this character, sci-fi deck, I've got this diamond deck plate. this is the closest thing Hero Forge has to an actual sci-fi base. I expect at some point in the future, because they've added quite a significant amount of sci-fi stuff. Obviously, they're beginning to sell sci-fi figures now. They should be probably adding more sci-fi bases in the future, I would expect. But let's look at another Nagana before we go on with an examination of the. So this is a guard. Now, again, this is a standing pose where there's a little bit more of the tail on the ground. And that combined with the fact that I've put a trident in their hands, because they're amphibious. They have cities that are at the edges of lakes. And so they're very much in the water, out of the water. I just thought, boy, a trident, this was supposed to be like a guard, a ceremonial guard for one of the leaders. So I've created this guy, and I'm going to export him as an STL file. And I've got a buddy with a brand new resin printer, and I can probably prevail upon him to get a bunch of figures printed for me until I purchase a resin printer, because I'm kind of like, yeah, we need to do that. But so this he's in a more standing pose. I gave him a sci-fi power shield thing here, force shield. He's got, it's a ceremonial guard. So we've got the shield, which is not a good match to Star Frontier's technology, but it's okay. We've given him a trident pole arm to use as part of a ceremonial weapon, but he also carries, automatic rifle and a pistol. And I've actually added, this is a feature of the description for the Nagana. I've added sound canceling headphones here. And that's because of their sensitivity to sonic fields. And so that's going to be discussed a little bit more as we go in depth. And so I just thought that was a great feature to add to him, because you're not going to be able to use a sonic weapon around him and he won't suffer the penalty from it because he has the sound canceling headphones, which probably doesn't wear all the time. But I just put him on the figure because there was no place to be able to hang them around his neck or hang them from a belt. So, and this guy's been done up as a white motif. Let's look at the leader I did. So this is a female leader. I've done her in black. Let's go back to the clothing. Remember I mentioned the belt? Fancy belt. Let's see how that looks on her. Okay. I'll have to paint that, but that's something I'll do off camera. And concerning the base here, this is obviously not the diamond deck plate. This is the rippled base. And since they're an aquatic amphibious creature I thought the rippled, that rippled, when you're at the shore and you see the ripples in the sand underwater, that was this base. You get it a nice beige color. It works. Although where she's sitting, she is obscuring most. Oh, you get a better view here from it. And I've endeavored to do a little bit of orange coloring in her fins. That's reminiscent of like yellow perch, where they have like the yellow coloring a little bit in their fins sometimes. So I went with that. So, and she's not carrying any guns or anything because she's the leader. And I just figured I was going to need at least one leader for adventures held on the home world of the Nagana, and then a handful of guards. Now in this particular pose, I've used the sitting pose, not the kneeling pose, which gives her a nice relaxed thing. So now with Hero Forge, you can bang these out, and you can do screenshots. You can close in and just do a nice screenshot zeroed in on the character, and you don't have to do the miniatures. Now, if I was to buy her, I just got it as plastic that I paint, $19. That's a bit pricey. I don't like that price myself. The premium plastic is $29.99. The color plastic, so if I wanted this one right here and I clicked on it, that would be $44.99, $45 just for one miniature. I'm not cool with that. If you wanted it in bronze, and I guess this is an actual metal figure, that would be $100. You can also do color standees. That price is a little more reasonable. $13, $12.99. Here's where your money's at. Is an STL file, $7.99. This means you can print as many of these as you want if you have a 3D printer, or if, like a buddy of mine just got himself a resin printer. He is certainly promoting something in that $200 range of resin printer to me, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm probably going to need that, just because I do a lot with miniatures, and and you don't have to do that. You could do the digital miniature for virtual tabletops. And again, that's the same as the STL file. It's $7.99. So there are options here. I love the fact that you don't even have to buy anything. You can use the program. You can create your character, do a screenshot of them. You can save them. You'll have, once you have an account with them, you have a hero file. Everything I've worked on in here. Just working on different things for Star Frontiers. I tried doing an Ifschnit, tried doing a Boonsha, tried doing some Vim, and but right now I've been working on the Nagana. So this is very handy. Now, enough of the free commercial for Hero Forge. So it's handy. We were able to make a series of characters that we can use. They're not a perfect match to the Nagana. Nothing rarely is. Let's talk about senses. Their senses are very close to human. They have a dual larynx, which are worthy of note. That comes into their special species ability. But let's jump down here to this last paragraph. The Nagana are annoyed by the constant sonic disturbances and therefore shun the use of sonic-based weapons and devices. When around such things, sonic swords, for example, they have a -10 penalty on any intuition or logic check because of the distraction. Earplugs common to many industrial settings are sufficient to prevent this penalty. Now, Hero Forge doesn't have earplugs that you can just stick in the ears, but it had those headphones, very modern looking, and they look like sound canceling headphones to me. So I put them on my Nagana guard to suggest, all right, yeah, you can fire up your sonic shield, you can fire up your sonic weapons, but I can negate that -10 penalty. So that's number one. Number two, I think that on the Nagana homeworld, which we're going to talk about in more depth here, that they are going to outlaw sonic weapons. Now, this will be Nagana law, and it may not necessarily apply to modern frontier law or characters, and we'll see that in a minute. So let's go over to speech here. We get some instruction here on naming conventions. Lots of vowels, then N's, M's, and S's, but lots of vowels mixed into their thing. And we get an example down here. Nagana names tend to be full of vowels, letters, and the letters N, M, and S's, all females. Female names end with a hyphen followed by the suffix na. So when I created my Nagana, I didn't do that male-female thing. I just used the male body always because I think putting, female chest anatomy on the figures looked a little silly and stupid to me. So all of my Nagana look more or less the same. I'm sure the Nagana are able to figure out who the females and the males are all on their own. But there's no obvious distinguishing anatomy other than the fluff here in the article does say that the coloration of the fins tends to be more flamboyant in the female. So it's we get this suffix of na added to all female names. So that's your clue right away. And then there's a prefix of on, followed by a hyphen, then the name, and that denotes a leader. And we get an example of a female ruling council member in Spire, the capital city on Leen. And that would appear like An Mola Na. An Mola Na. So you've got the two hyphens, you've got the prefix denoting a leader, and the suffix denoting a female. This brings up several questions to me. Number one, wouldn't it be cool to make this society matriarchal? You know, that the females tend to be the leaders. Sure, there can be a male leader, but it's a matriarchal society. The females tend to lead. And if that's the case, then let's write in another little wrinkle. What if it's the males that care for the eggs after? Because if you notice here, let me just scroll up. And right here we have reproductive system. They are heterosexual viviparous. That means two genders, and they lay eggs. So, you know, what if it's the males that take care of the eggs? I kind of like that feature. I kind of think that's interesting. Females tend to lead the society. You know, maybe there's like an emancipation program going on, suffrage program for the male Nagana fighting for the right to vote. I don't know. I mean, you could do things along those lines. I like the idea that the females, so that's why I did a female leader in that nice relaxed sitting position. Also, what to point out here is capital native city on Leen of Spire. I really should be talking about this when we get to society and customs, but the detail is right here. Spire is spelled S-P-Y-R-E, and we're going to see in a moment that their cities have spires, S-P-I-R-E, of coral. They have all these beautiful, chaotic spires of coral. When you look at the cities as a whole, despite the chaos of the coral, it's actually beautiful. And so this spire is spelled just slightly different. I'm going to just point out that this is the Pan-Gal name for the city. The Nagana name is going to be much different. It's going to have a lot of vowels in it and some N's and M's and S's, but a lot of vowels. So this is actually the Pan-Gal name. Now, I generally treat English, which I speak, as Pan-Gal in game. And so this is the official Pan-Gal name for the city, translation. I just want to point that out. I also think that the planet, the moon Leen, that is, again, a Pan-Gal name, and that both of these Pan-Gal names probably are loan words from the Drollicite language. They're obviously not loan words from the Vrusk language. So just little wrinkles there I want to point out. I was playing around with this naming convention, and I came up with Anunnaki Naga with lots of extra A's in there. And that is world of the Nagana. And you see that construction of Nagana in the second word there. So it's very awkward. It doesn't roll off the tongue. It's the writer is actually correct when they say it's not a very elegant language. But moving right along. Oh, one more detail. They specify here that Spire is the capital native city on Leen. Well, that establishes that Spire is the de jure official seat of Nagana government. But the fact that they emphasize a native implies that there's another de facto capital, and that is the colony established from Turladrom by the Vrusk and the Drolicites. We don't have a name for that city, and I haven't really thought one up yet, but there should be a city that is administered by the Drolicites. There's a reason why there'd be few verse there. We'll get to that. But the Dralasites, it's a major city, and it's a frontier city. It's the location of the only starport on this planet. Although starport could be a loose term since it's a moon and we could presume a little bit of a lighter gravity. What if it was a space elevator instead of shuttles taking off and landing all the time? I kind of like that idea. I like the idea of a space elevator and a little docking port at the top of the space elevator. Like ship the industrial goods up that are being done there. Now, why did I say industrial goods? Well, that's because if you go to Zebulon's Guide to the Frontier and you look up the astrographic catalog and you go to the Fromeltar Turtle system, and we see that the moon Leen has an industrial economy. Except when we get into society and customs here, we see that it says that the Nagana are a pre-industrial species. So how can you have industry with a pre-industrial? Well, that's because this colony that has been established from Turtle is a factory, is an industrial complex. So this industrial frontier city, it's a full-on industrial frontier city established by a versed trade house or conglomerate on Leen. Why? Why would they go to that trouble to have to build in new infrastructure? Well, I'm going to go with that they're just using the cheap labor of the Nagana in their factories. And this has led to, the Nagana have embraced certain technological advances, like they've completely adapted to firearms and so on. And some Nagana get education and do leave the planet. And this is how it happens, that there's probably a training center at this full-on frontier city. There's probably a full-up proper medical facility there. It could even be that there's a medical services organization clinic there that treats the Nagana, if there's and it also treats any normal, core 4 frontier citizen that visits the moon Leen. So I don't know what that city's name is, what it should be, but there should be a full up frontier city on Leen it's got all the amenities, maybe slightly higher prices. Stuff's got to be shipped in. I don't know, along those lines. Now, you could show up at that city with sonic weapons. Not a problem. It's just if you take sonic weapons or even the sonic energy field, defensive shield, out into the wild, into Nagana land, if we could call it that, that's where you would have a problem, where the Nagana would be like, and you can end up under arrest. You could end up, prison, have to go before a leader. So I think we've milked this, other than we get a clue that there's a ruling council, that the method of government, some sort of ruling council for the Nagana. Now, moving on to society and customs. The society and customs. Now, few versed personnel at the industrial city / starport. And that is because somewhere in here, we get the details that they've never developed space flight on their own. They were pre-industrial. Originally, they just used bows, spears, but for the past 100 years, they've adopted automatic pistols and rifles. Hence my portraying my Nagana with, pistols and the one guard with the machine gun on his back. Nagana are generally peaceful and value art and beauty above all else. Their cities are works of choral splendor with high spires erected in shapes that would seem chaotic alone, but when looked at as a whole, the city is one giant piece of art. When Dralasites from Turtle colonized Leen, they met a nice coexistence with the Nagana, and information, art, and sciences were exchanged. So it's not a one-way relationship where it's we're giving the Nagana weapons and technology. There's an exchange of art and culture going on. Now the Nagana, they're learning frontier technology, and a few of them are moving out. So I suspect that as a race, there's a cultural ethic that they just don't value going out into the wider frontier. Some individuals do, but as a race, they're more about let's just stay here, let's build our own society type of thing. Now we get down to an interesting detail here. During the Second Sapphire War, the First Fleet of Sapphire moved on Turladrom and occupied it for some time, then routed from Matterly Star. The Sapphire did not attack a single Nagana. They opened trade negotiations with them. So after the Second Sapphire War, Starlaw is going to be investigating this because that's their mandate. Interstellar criminals and Sapphire agents. So there is some element of a Sapphire angle into the frontier through the Nagana. That there are potentially Nagana Sapphire agents out there. So this is something to keep in mind and have it as a background plot hook for your campaign. Now, the Nagana get along with all other races and tend not to judge people by their appearance. However, the Versk tend to look similar to the Samanasa, a predator from Leen. They find themselves distrustful and sometimes fearful of the insectoids. So on Leen, there is some sort of an insectoid type creature that is a predator that looks like a Vrusk. That's an interesting fact. The creature is not illustrated. The creature doesn't have a stat block, but obviously you'd use one of the carnivore stat blocks for, say, a large creature maybe. Now, when the Nagana visit Turladrom, which is a split population of Vrusk and Drolocytes, they often have difficulties dealing with the ruling Versk Council, the Pack. And only seem willing to associate with the elected Drolocyte Council, the Draag. Now, I just want to point out this whole idea of a ruling Versk Council. It's a ruling council of businesses, and then there is an elected Drolocyte Council of elected Drolocytes. And somehow this works together to govern the planet. And this is canon. What is not canon is these names, but I like these names. Pack is probably a Drolocyte name in Pangal. Draag is kind of DRA, suggests Drolocyte, so it's another Drolocyte word, loan word in Pangal. So I like that. Those are interesting details about them. So the Nagana, they have their own government. But they do have some impetus to try to deal with the government on Turladrom, but they only want to deal with the Drolocytes because they don't like the Versk. They're uncomfortable with the Versk. This is good. This is good material. There's an element here for maybe the Nagana. There's a storyline here for maybe the Nagana wanting to gain more representation, more influence with the Council of Worlds. More representation, more control of their destiny, which they don't have because they're a minor, pre-industrial species. They're not primitives, but they are a very, age coming into industry through Leen. The last thing here. Now we get their special abilities. They're amphibious. They've lost a lot of their aquatic ability because they have been adapting to being on land. So they are equally good on land, in the water, same movement rate. They're not faster in the water. They've lost something as they have evolved and adapted. So I like the amphibious. Next, you get the ultrasonic communication. The Nagana can choose to speak at a higher falsetto frequency. When doing this, they can hear one another. Some natural animals can hear this frequency as well, and some are quite angered by it. They cannot use this ability to speak at ranges beyond which they would otherwise have spoken if using their normal lower frequency. So they've got the two larynxes. They can communicate normally with the rest of the core 4. They have an ultrasonic ability that can be that is not communicatable to the core 4. They can use this ultrasonic ability when they're speaking. They could say, greetings, to a player character, but ultrasonically they could warn the other Nagana around them, be careful, this one has a gun. So this is an interesting ability. It has 0 use if you're a Nagana player character traveling outside of their society with the rest of the core 4. Unless you do something like specify that you've added programming to the polyvox for it to translate the ultrasonic communication. Then the Nagana, or for the computer on the starship, could then speak ultrasonically. It would be picked up and communicated and passed over the communication net. That might be worthwhile doing for situations like the ships being stormed by pirates. The Nagana could then say things that can't be heard by anybody else. But for the player characters to hear it, it's going to be broadcast by a polyvox or by their chronocom after it's translated from the ultrasonic frequency. So I like this thing, but it's practically useless to you as a player if you're playing a Nagana in the wider frontier. So those are my thoughts on digging a little bit deeper on the Nagana. And I think there's a lot here. There's a lot of material here that can be dug into and be used to flesh out and color in a color of a corner of the frontier that has not received a lot of development, which is Turladrom Fromeltar. There's not a lot of development here, but interesting details have come about here. And I like this idea that there is a de jure capital, the Nagana capital, called Spire, and a de facto capital, which is the colony, I believe, established by a Versk conglomerate or a Versk trade house, largely staffed by Dralocytes because of the issues with the Versk being uncomfortable, causing the Nagana to be uncomfortable. Yeah, there's some there, but they don't go out much. We're talking top echelons. They stay in a boardroom. They stay in the suite. They don't venture far and wide. Maybe every once in a while one does and gets into some trouble, but mostly it's Dralocytes. So I like that idea. It makes this an interesting location, and we now have access to miniatures through Hero Forge. I actually I exported one STL file of my character here, and not in printed color, but just the STL file. He's been primered. He's got an ink wash, and now I'm going to commence to painting him. I used the colorization process in Hero Forge just to show you a better looking finished product here for the video, because it looks good. The Hero Forge products look good when you do the colorization of them. Here's my guard on a rippled sand base. Here's my leader and a close-in. And again, you don't have to actually purchase the miniatures. You could do screenshots and just use it in your game, particularly if you've got a Theater of the Mind game and you just want to show the characters. All right, here's the Nagana you're dealing with. I think these are interesting details, and it definitely makes the moon Leen an interesting location for player characters to visit. There's a lot of scope there for adventure, potentially angles where dealing with the Nagana leadership, or the Star Law angle of potential Sapphire agents left over from the Second Sapphire War. So I'm glad that I've done a second really hard look at it, because I'm now inspired to use it in my game. This is certainly an area where there's enough material here for me to sink my teeth into and bring forward an adventure. So this is Tom for Star Frontiers Gamer with a deeper look at the Nagana, hoping you will consider some adventuring in the Fromeltar system. Visit the moon Leen and visit the Nagana. Interact with them. Just don't bring any sonic weapons. Could get you in trouble. And I want to thank my subscribers. I want to thank you for watching. And I will see you in the frontier.